We formed up and headed to sea again, this time from Liverpool. We didn't know, but Sicily was next. The Silver Walnut left the convoy at Cape Town to coal up and for repairs. She was constantly breaking down and was a sitting duck for submarines. Fortunately, there are not many subs in the South Africa vicinity. While aboard the Silver Walnut, I struck up an acquaintance with a Scottish engine room engineer named Hastings, age about 55 to 60, with lots of money. The convoy formed for Sicily at Alexandria and ran into heavy submarine attacks and mines. I actually saw one torpedo miss us. I was now on the American Liberty ship Pio Pico because the Silver Walnut was abandoned with all the barges we worked so hard to clean and paint, including painted maple leaves. Just a little sidelight, which was very funny. Able-bodied seaman Bouchard was painting the deck of LCM 108 and told us the paint, Battleship Gray, was too thin. We said, add varnish, which of course made it thicker. But he kept complaining, it's too thin, it's too thin. We said, add more varnish. Finally, he ended putting it on with a putty knife. It was so thick. You smart beggars, he said. The barges for the 80th Flotilla were left behind anyway. July 10, 1943. We arrived off Sicily in the middle of the night and stopped about 4 miles out. Other ships and new LCIs, landing craft infantry, fairly large barges, were landing troops. Soldiers went off each side of the forecastle, down steps into the water, and then ashore, during which time we saw much tracer fire. This was to be our worst invasion yet. Those left aboard had to wait until daylight, so we went fishing for an hour or more, but there were no fish. A signal came through, do not fire on low-flying aircraft, they are ours and towing gliders. What? In the dark, he says? Next morning, as we slowly moved in, we saw gliders everywhere. I saw them sticking out of the water, crashed on land, and in the vineyards. In my 27 days there, I did not see a glider intact. We started unloading supplies with our LCMs about a half mile off the beach, and then the worst began. German bombers. We were bombed 36 times in the first 72 hours, at dusk, at night, at dawn, and all day long, and they said we had complete command of the air. We fired at everything. I saw P-38s, German and Italian fighters, and my first dogfights. Stukas blew up working parties on the beach once when I was only about 100 feet out. Utter death and carnage. Our American gun crews had nothing but coffee for 3 or 4 days and stayed close to their guns all the time. I give them credit. Evis P. Murphy's pet monkey went mad, and we put it in a bag of sand meant to douse incendiary bombs and threw him over the side. The Russian stoker on our ship, named Katana, said Dieppe was never like this and hid under a winch. Shrapnel and bombs just rained down. My pal, or chum, leading seaman Herring, was bothered constantly with constipation, but when bombs began to drop close in Sicily, his problem suddenly disappeared. He was so scared. Once, with our LCM loaded with high-octane gas and a lorry, we were heading for the beach when we saw machine gun bullets stitching the water right toward us. Fortunately, an LST, landing ship for tanks, loaded with Bofors, opened up and scared off the planes, or we were gone if the bullets had hit the gas cans. I was hiding behind a truck tire. So was Joe Watson of Simcoe. What good would that have done? Our beach had machine gun nests carved out of the ever-present limestone, with slots cut in them to cover our beaches. A few hand grenades tossed in during the night silenced them forever. Slowly we took control, and enemy raids were only sporadic, but usually at dawn or dusk, when we couldn't see them, but they could see us. At such times we had to get out of our LCMs and lay smoke screens, and traveled the ocean side or the beach side, depending upon which way the wind was blowing. Even then, they could see the masts sticking up. During one raid, I was caught on the open deck of the Pio Pico, so I lay down right on a boiling hot water pipe. I sure got up quickly. We were never hit, but 6 ships were hit in a sneak attack out of the sun by German fighters carrying a bomb apiece. At night, they would drop chandelier flares with their engine motors cut off. Everything would be dark, and then suddenly it was like daylight. The flares were on parachutes and took forever to come down. After the flares lighted us up, in came the bombers. Fortunately, our gunners got so expert they could shoot out the flares. Our LCM was fortunate enough to pick up rum, destined for the officers' mess, but it never arrived there. We stowed it in the engine room. From then on, we went 6 or 7 miles up the beach at night, had a swim, slung our hammocks, and drank ourselves to sleep, to awake in the morning covered with shrapnel. But we never heard a sound. One morning, as we returned to the beach after a heavy bombing, we noticed an LST with its bows completely gone and smoldering a bit. We went aboard to examine it and found under the rear canopy a sailor sound asleep in his hammock. After we awakened him, he said he hadn't heard a thing. The rest of the crew were missing.